Hello, it's the Family Values podcast. My name's Joe Woods.
My name's Tom Hicks.
We're speaking to you on Jan the 31st, 2020, so that can only mean one thing.
It's Brexit Day. Hey, streamers, flags, all the regalia. Well, not around here because it's London, but...
Yeah, exactly. It's just literally the only point of celebration tonight will be on Westminster Green, literally by people who are not from London.
Yeah, pretty much. I've seen people, they have been shipping people up from Southampton, actually, which is quite funny. Yeah, well, I say shipping people up, it seems like an
I'm shipping up to London, whoa! But yeah, fuck me. So basically today we're coming at you again freestyly because, let's be honest, it's Brexit Day, we don't really want to talk about anything else.
No, there's not a thing, and thankfully the Labour leadership contest has been pretty quiet, in fact relatively shit.
I mean Jess Phillips has dropped out, that's about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, Tom, take it away. What do you see happening in the next few days now we start the actual leaving process?
Next few days you're going to get a little bump, a little plaster on the ground, reality, legally, economically speaking. Obviously nothing has actually really changed because we're still in the withdrawal phase. So apart from that, there'll still be people going through, I believe they still go through the European court system and all that. The only major tangible thing which I've heard is, I think we discussed this just after the podcast stopped recording last week, was that Britain has announced that we will not be signing up to the controversial Article 13 laws, the new copyright directive that the EU will be making all the EU 27 sign up to, which seems to be the first major divergence between EU and UK law.
I mean, Priti Patel in the last week has basically come out and said we will not be taking part in regulatory alignment with the EU, which we can only speculate what she means by that in regards to which regulation will be dropping and what we will be not, just not taking on.
Yeah, and at this moment in time, there are certain regulations that we have actually stronger than the EU's. For example, I believe our annual leave is minimum annual leave is stronger. Our statutory sick pay is stronger.
I mean, there's going to be certain kind of workers' rights that are just going to be stronger than certain nations within, and
because they've just speaking from a raw economy point of view, ours is obviously a lot more developed economy than a lot of the nations in the sort of Eastern Bloc. So they would have had for them to have our standards straight away from joining the EU would have been an impossible order. So.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, obviously at some point in this episode we're going to get on to the Eastern states because. Let's not skirt around the bush here, which is the eastern states are absolutely crucial to the reason the nation, the 52% voted out.
Yeah.
To try and kind of push that to the side is bollocks. We talk post-referendum, we talk in these phrases of sovereignty and taking back our rules. Let's be honest, one way or another, it was mainly about the accession of the Eastern EU states.
I think that had a massive contribution to it. I also think the sort of stronger influence that Germany had particularly on migration, when thinking back to the Syrian refugee crisis.
But again, to bring that up, and you're right to bring it up in context to the Brexit debate, in the sense in a retrospective sense, as to reasons that got us to leave. But as anyone should know, who basically just does a very basic bit of research, we are not entitled to take away from the few quoted. We are not entitled to take any quote-unquote Syrian refugees.
No, and I believe David Cameron was pretty hard on that when in the negotiations at the time. Not anything to do with Brexit, but he said that he was not going to sign up to it. And that is one of the things that we've always been a little bit more outside. We've always had the sort of special rules.
I suppose we were always kind of the rebellious three, so to speak, us, Ireland and Denmark. Us three were never... We were always given the veto, basically in every big vote. We didn't have to take Schengen. And by the way, Schengen, going back to the Syrian refugee debate, Schengen only applies to people who have permission to be in the EU zone. So again, Schengen does not apply to the refugee issue.
On a legal level, but on a sort of practical level, if you don't have a hard border.
But even if we were a Schengen state, I mean, you'd have to have you still have the Channel Tunnel or ferries, the ferry ports, and again, they, as being people without permission to be in the EU, they cannot board those vessels or board the Eurotunnel tram.
When we were talking about the UK, it's obviously a practical point, because we're an island nation, we have
exactly that.
But we
are the water fortress.
Exactly.
What's that fucking film with Kevin Costner, Waterworld? It's like that.
I think when it comes to Schengen in particular, it's the practical and the legal, but not in regards to the UK,
yes,
but in regards to other land-based countries. So there's a sort of thing.
Absolutely, and there is a merit to that debate, in the sense that, do you really want completely open borders between continental countries? There are obvious issues with that: weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, human trafficking. And do you know what? It's something I don't have a fully formed black-white opinion on.
I would say that on a sort of gut feeling level, I would, if I was a nation like Hungary or even Belgium or something, I would be against that. But that's coming from, as a gut feeling, was conservative.
I'm with you.
Leaning.
Gut feeling. You think what can pass over borders without being intercepted, and gut feeling, you go and you naturally want to. You're in a populist wants to come out, but then you have to think practically, and think, well, if it's within one nation and it's an illegal activity, surely in the next nation it's an illegal activity anyway.
Particularly within the context of the EU, you've got to think that, particularly for the big things as well.
But then obviously you have to go further into this debate. There's discrepancies between the effectiveness of authorities and security services in one nation to the next. Obviously, did the rule of law. Let's be honest, they're not quite aligned across the whole of the EU.
No, that is one thing which I think we definitely agree on, and there's the sort of myth of alignment, as it were, because the EU would like people to think that everyone is 100% aligned, but they don't want to risk anyone getting too pissed off of them. So if they're not 100% aligned, like a good example of this is smoking inside in Spain, where it's very, very lax. It's gotten a little bit more strict in the last few years, but it's supposed to be an EU-wide thing where you're not supposed to.
I know most of the northern European nations have taken that rule, that ban on. I think the one exception is Holland. If I'm correct.
Cultural reasons,
yes. Let's call them cultural reasons, as opposed to touristic reasons. Money-making reasons. But yeah, I mean, alignment across 27 different countries on pretty much spanning the whole continent is just naturally impossible, particularly when you've got a policy of expansion into newly developing countries.
Yes, and I think one of the things that was always sort of a little bit of annoyance, particularly to the British, was that because that's very much we're one of the most developed nations in Europe, and we have a very, very strong sense of the rule of law. So if EU passed a directive, we were like, we're not going to disobey the directive because everyone in this country, Remain or Leave, does respect that. If that's the law, that's the law.
Yes.
But we really looked over to our continental brothers and thought, well, they don't seem to be respecting it as much as we would do. So that was.
And I mean, look, and I don't mean to pick on the Eastern EU countries here, because actually, and honestly, as a Remain voter and as someone who has a complete kind of basic, a basic feeling that the EU is for the greater good in regards to free trade and in regards to somewhat bringing up of alignment across a continent in terms of obviously alignment of sort of quality of goods, in terms of alignment of health and safety, alignment of economics and trade. I think that look, not just even within those sort of former Eastern Bloc countries. You know, Italy, for example, which is one of the major six that formed the EU. I mean, that might be the country that kind of might piss people off in the UK the most if they really knew the kind of where EU funding went to, where alignment really doesn't match up to the northern European countries in regards to health and safety, in regards to workers' rights. So, you know, let's not just pretend it's the old East. I mean, again, Italy, Spain, Portugal, they're all pretty, I mean, the southern European nations are equally pretty bad and Italy is corrupt. So,
well, this is it, and I think there was the sort of the pretending that we're one European nation as well. I know you don't think that was what the argument was,
no.
But that was definitely what it seemed to be coming from the continent and also coming from a lot of the Leave supporting people.
Personally, I think that in terms of, I know there is this feeling of the project within certain members of the EU Parliament, particularly embedded members of the Parliament, people like Guy Verhofstadt.
Yes. He must be the most hated EU politician from every side because he doesn't help anyone.
I am not anti-EU. I cannot stand Guy Verhofstadt. Way too ideologically driven in regards to the project itself. Someone who really does openly believe in a United States of Europe. I mean...
He called for a European empire at the Lib Dems conference, didn't he?
Yeah, I know. Fuck that. I mean, again, I think I've said this before, and I think I've said to you, there are red lines that would, turn me against EU membership. Things like, absolutely, things like enforced taxation alignment would obviously turn me against, membership of the EU, but just the ideology alone within certain embedded members, particularly the top of the rafters, so to speak, people like Verhofstadt, the idea of a united Europe, I don't think was the original premise. The original premise was trying to bring up and roughly somewhat make similar the economies of, just a newly formed, repatched Europe post World War II.
Well, I would say that it's one of those things where everyone who was one of the founding members of the EU sort of project had a very different idea of where they wanted it to end up. I mean, obviously it was started off as the European Steel and Coal Community.
Yeah.
So having just something as a Steel and Coal Community to going from that to a political union, there's got to be some people within that who wanted that to be the end goal, whilst there was also definitely people who still wanted it to be mainly on economic and trade basis.
We talk about political leaders of the time of the founding of the EU, when it was, as you said, the Steel and Coal Community, that had greater aspirations, and it's ideologically driven mindset. People like Charles de Gaulle, for example. But Churchill ultimately saw a United States of Europe.
But he also saw an Imperial British Empire. He never saw the empire falling. So
essentially, you're talking about the EU being like a vassal state of the British Empire,
being the British Empire having its sort of Commonwealth and former colonies in all its glory. Churchill would have never envisioned, or at least never would wanted to envision, what the British Empire came. He did everything as humanly possible to stop that from happening, and obviously history was completely against him on that one, because he should have really known, being the man who was in charge of the war at the time, he was just never going to be able to do that.
Being the man who was in charge of an economy that had gone into a wartime economy and now knew that it was inevitable he was going to have to drop his colonies in the Far East and even Africa and the Caribbean eventually. He of all people should have known that was not possible to unite Europe in that way.
But there was unite Europe in a
not in the EU sense, not in the trade bloc sense. I mean, in the sense of, again, like a potential European a United States of Europe.
It was always going to be tough, but I think particularly in the late 1940s, early 1950s, you've got communism, and you've still got Spain under fascist rules.
Portugal under fascist rule.
Exactly, and you've still got that fascist sentiment really still bubbling under the surface in a lot of European countries. So it is very difficult to sort of put yourself into those into the shoes.
We tend to forget that in West Germany, fascist parties, they were still there. Essentially the kids of the major leaders of the Nazi party were forming new fascist parties.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you grow up all the time. I'm going to say this right now. I'm not for one moment comparing the current European Union to Nazis, but if you, similar to people of our generation, where they've entirely grown up with the EU, so to then turn around and say, actually, we're leaving, to them, that's like, it's a similar situation where it's like, but we've just grown up learning that this was the great thing.
Yeah, so Germany, particularly, if you're from the West, particularly as well, the West of Germany, the idea of the EU is this founding union, this uniting union of Western European nations that helped kind of fund each other's economy by common cause and helped patch, again, industries back together. You sort of look at West Germany, it relied on the Ruhr Valley, which was it was the massive valley filled with industry that now makes up the cities of Cologne, Dusseldorf, Dortmund, all these big industrial powerhouses that didn't just provide jobs for a lot of Western Germany, it provided jobs in Belgium, France, Holland.
Particularly for the German sort of people who grew up in the late 20th century, it seems to be the greatest form of government that Germany has ever had.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a sort of sense. And I think that it's sort of a thing of, should work for Germany, so therefore it should work for everyone, because Germany had never really had a proper nation state that had actually worked without it resulting in a war.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, Germany, and also just Germans don't understand the British mindset.
No.
It doesn't understand the island mindset.
No, particularly when they obviously have a very proud history, but we've been united 4 countries and then united country for 300 years, and before that another 500-600 years our own respective countries.
Where we've been maybe a collection of 2 to 3 different countries, let's say 1,000 years ago, that had just been united by the Normans south of the border, and then united by the Celtic clans north of the border. We've been somewhat united for the best part of 1,000 years, even though, you could argue England and Scotland were technically 2 different countries, but they weren't really, either one of them at that time were either really that important, so it didn't really matter. I mean, Germany's been a country for, at most 150 years?
Yeah, and then before that you had the Holy Roman Empire,
which was the first version of united Germany.
It was, but power was so locally based.
Yes, actually, funny you say that, because I've just been reading a book on both the Holy Roman Empire and then what became Switzerland, and essentially what was the Holy Roman Empire's downfall was that it, as you said about localised power, it gave powers to the duchies, it gave local power to the duchies that it would find hard to govern from Bonn, from the middle of the empire, from the capital. Or from, you name, because it changed capitals quite a few different times, Prague, Bonn.
But the Habsburg was in charge.
Yes, well, the Habsburgs when it was in Vienna. So essentially, it would give regional, local autonomy to duchies, which were either hard to govern from a way off, and had a lot of important trade routes going through that these duchies could defend on their own. They got kind of semi-autonomous status within the country, within the empire, but they all just broke off. They all broke off pretty quickly. I mean, you had the 3 original cantons that then come to made Switzerland, Unterland, and the rest of them. You had Milan, which was again, you'll see a pattern here. All of the early duchies to break off from the Holy Roman Empire were Alpine duchies,
right?
Because they were all on trade routes to southern Europe, and they could all defend themselves in the Alps.
Yeah, well, you've got particularly in those days, actually crossing the Alps with an old-style army.
And the point I'm getting to is the Germans have to kind of look at us like they should be looking at the Austrians. We have a quite similar mindset to both the Austrians and the Swiss, which is we are separate from the continent in a way. They're separate because they're up in the Alps. We're separate because we're separated by a small bit of sea.
I think that's true, and it's very hard, particularly when you look at the history of borders and the border between the French and the Holy Roman Empire and all the little duchies constantly changing all over the time. A lot of people think of even today when English is the sort of lingua franca for business. It's still very, very common. It's still quite uncommon to see someone who only speaks one language in the sort of middle of the continent.
Absolutely,
whereas over here, we've been extremely lucky. Whereas we're not very language heavy people, regardless, but the last 20-30 years, because of Americans dominant English.
We have to be the country in Europe that speaks the least foreign languages easily. I mean, okay, that might be wrong. There could be some countries quite far off in the east that might speak less foreign languages, but I think as a native group, we probably speak less.
I would say definitely, and particularly when you look at education. I mean, I don't know what your experience was like within modern foreign language in school, but it was pretty much a joke. No one really actually learned it.
It was awful.
Yeah.
Saying that, we're both sitting in a flat overlooking a school called Woodbridge High School, which is actually a language college, but both of us neither went to it.
No.
All of our friends went to it, and it's actually a language school, and a lot of our friends that went there even now speak fluent German. Some of them fluent Russian.
Yeah, I know a few people who speak Russian, and which is quite funny because
they all went to that school, and and actually that's supposed to be a really great language system of learning there. My school, it's either you learn French or you learn nothing, and if you don't give a shit, you don't give a shit.
That was it. They learned French, and there was a few kids there who were from a country like the Congo, who they sort of spoke broken French. But a couple of kids who were absolutely crap at all other subjects, but were fluent in French and they just loved French lessons. But yeah, going back to sort of Brexit and retrospective, I wanted to get your opinion on the mourning that is taking place by certain
the candlelight vigil.
The vigils, particularly up north, no, in Scotland, I should say.
Fucking shove a gun in my mouth. Ugh, fuck me. No, I find it cringeworthy, obviously. Again, I've said this before. Yes, I understand if you voted to remain in the EU. Again, I voted to remain in the EU. I don't like calling myself a Remainer because it defines yourself as such, and
it doesn't. It helps fuel the partisan or fire.
Yeah, exactly. It fuels partisanism, and that doesn't help at this point in time. And also just defining yourself on how you voted in a vote 3.5 years ago doesn't. Get a life. But I mean, I understand particularly on an economic level, not wanting to leave the EU. But a lot of these people seem to be, and I hate using this term because it makes me seem like a sort of right-wing ideologue, but they are literally, in the literal sense, they are virtue signallers. And these are the type of people who only care about remaining in the EU because it's a pro-immigration stance.
Yeah, it's almost sort of left-wing reactionary. Because, the right-wingers don't like the EU. Well, I love the EU.
Yes, exactly, yeah. But when you ask them why, it's all down to immigration. It's all down to their pro-immigration. So, okay, well, what about the economic issues here? We talk. I mean, what about frictionless trade? What about lack of red tape? What about zero a zero tariff base? They won't give you arguments for that. They go but we want to show we love foreigners, which is fine. You're entitled to that, but it just doesn't help the Remain side of the argument because you haven't got a real valid point.
Well, yeah, it is, as I say, it's sort of a reactionary cultural point, and the only sort of culture that the European project would even have would be the phrase "strength in diversity."
Yeah,
which is like it's sort of okay, but what else? If you look over to America, for instance, you know what the Americans stand for.
Yeah,
they fight over who has the values of America over there. Whereas, apart from diversity, there is no sort of pan-European values. There's the idea of democracy and capitalism and everything, but these are very, very recent, and they weren't foundational EU sort of values.
Well, just to remember, looking at the values, I mean, the idea of the EU having anything in any way to having to do with immigration to this country only goes back 15 years. So, I mean, it's within both our conscious lifetimes. I mean, so... but as you said, I mean, what are the values they are fighting for, these people?
Yeah.
What are your views on these, these vigil holders?
Oh, I think they're complete and utter... Well, first of all, they love the smell of their own farts, because they just... It's just one of those things where you're going to spend your Friday evening standing in silence like you're mourning for someone.
Yes.
It's like... And you just look for an event that basically happened 3.5 years ago.
Sorry, that was the point I was going to make. The emotional connection by these people, this supposed... emotional connection they have to the EU, I really don't understand. It's a trade bloc.
Well, this is an interesting point, because I think that these people don't believe it's a trade bloc. They believe
it's an ultimate a unifying nation.
It's on the path towards the United States of Europe.
Yes,
and I think that opinion is a lot more commonly held than it was before the referendum.
So you think a lot of these people could be like on the softer end of the No Border Brigade?
I think there are people who have listened to Guy Verhofstadt or of his ilk and thought, actually, that's even better than what I thought of the EU. I think that's what they are. I'm only speculating on their motivations, but that's the only thing I can think to justify this type of reaction.
Because the thing is, I tend to know a lot of left-wing people, but they tend to be harder left than a lot of these people. Maybe I'm wrong, they could be equally as hard left, I don't know. But I know a lot of hard left people that are somewhat... They kind of say they're pro-EU, but mainly it's because it's an anti-right-wing thing.
Yeah. Whereas if you explain to these people sort of state aid rules, they might have a more Eurosceptic opinion.
I'm talking about people that before 2004 would have been definitely anti-EU. They would have been, anti-free trading, capitalist bloc on the continent of Europe. Now, because immigration's come into the debate, they feel like they can't say they're anti-EU.
So if you think about it, it was probably a stroke of genius by the pro-EU side about 20 years ago, but
from a
political point of view.
Yeah, I mean, not in this country, because
Not in this
naturally
country, no.
and I don't, you know...
It would have felt good at the time, particularly if you were in a Blairite government.
Yeah, and I don't even mean in a current affairs situation. I mean, in general, we've always been a little bit more right-wing than the rest of Western Europe anyway.
Yes.
As a nation.
I would say definitely so, particularly economically.
Yes.
I think there are some more socially conservative nations, and particularly our little brothers over in Ireland, as it were.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even they've seemed to have jumped ahead of us in terms of...
that's because of the Catholic sex paedophile scandal.
Yeah, so
there's been so much faith lost in the Catholic Church because of that. Basically, in the last 5 years, they caught up to the last 20 years of social progressive philosophy.
Yes.
With regards to...
Going back what you're saying about these vigil holders... I also think equally, I don't mind if anyone celebrates us leaving the EU tonight. I don't really give a shit, in all honesty. But I also find bussing yourself in from Manchester and Leeds to stand on Westminster Green on a night for a while that's been predicted to fucking piss it down with rain, and it is just started raining now, and it's not raining lightly.
No.
I also have to question, one, your mental stability, and two, why is this so important to you?
No, I think that's true as well. Like I'm today as a Leave voter, I'm happy. I will be hopefully we get into the pub at the right time. I'll be doing a shot on the stroke of 11. However, that's going to be my own private celebration, and I'm not going to be going out of my way to do it. You know what I mean?
And also, do you see a bit of potential fisticuffs taking place on Westminster Green tonight?
Unfortunately, I can... Hopefully now that the rain's come, that will make most of those people piss off.
And I don't mean between angry grannies on both sides. I mean, do you see a bit of a far-right...
From this sort of Antifa versus EDL sort of mentality?
I don't think... Here's the thing. I don't think Antifa will be down there. Reason being... Antifa, just by knowing members of Antifa and quite a lot... An anti-fascist league, and I'm not boxing anyone or anything, but... The majority of the provokers and what's the word I'm looking for? The kind of the skirmishers are not English. A lot of them are Spanish and Italian for some reason.
Yeah,
and they're all anti-EU.
Ah,
yeah,
they're proper anarchists.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh well, that always made me my head scratch about being pro-EU and anti-folk. It's like, but that's an entire form of government.
No, I know.
I think they're ideologically consistent on that one.
I know a lot of what you'd call, I suppose, the upfront protesters and the capos and skirmishers from people again, like the London Anti-Fascist League and London Antifa. Yeah, most of them are like Spanish or Italian, a big part Italian, and they're all anti-EU. So I doubt you'll see them down there tonight. You might see a few you might see a few English Antifa down there, but I don't think they'll be trying to confront anyone.
No.
What I fear you might see the Kent Fash, so people like the Pine Mash and EDL down there trying to start on people.
You could see that potentially, but from what I've heard tonight, there is a fuck ton of police presence there as well.
You fucking hope so.
Yeah, there should be. And as I say, I reckon a lot of the people who will be going out there deliberately to start fights are just not the type of people who are going to stand in the ring to do it, which is...
I think you're wrong about that.
Really?
Yeah. I kind of know these types, man. Not literally know them, but I've been in the proximity with them, and they just want to scrap no matter what. And a lot of them, like on a night like tonight, when everyone knows been coming for a long time, I think quite a few of them might be armed and stuff as well.
Jesus.
Not like, I'm not talking guns. I'm talking fucking koshes and knuckle dusters and little knives and stuff like that.
Well, I would hope that it wouldn't happen, but it wouldn't be good, particularly as a Leave voting person. If you're going to go and beat up a load of Remainers, it's like, right, you just proved every single thing they've been talking about for the last 2 years. What the fuck?
Yes, but yeah, it doesn't help your side when you can just point to them and go, "You're all thugs, you're all racist, you're all jackbooted thugs."
Yes, particularly if they do happen to have, which is not out of the realms of possibility, a racially tinged motivation.
Oh, absolutely. Because I think I've said it on the podcast. I was at the march, the second referendum march on the end of October, the day the Letwin agreement was passed, and I wasn't there because I wanted any further because I wanted the second referendum necessarily. I was just there to view it, what was going on. And I was outside the one pub with a friend of mine, staring over at Westminster Green and looking over at the protest going on. And because it was the only fucking pub there, we were also surrounded by a lot of fash who'd gone there to start problems.
Right.
And they were really looking just to fucking fight people and just kick off. And there was only a small group, like a relatively small group of them, but they were looking to fucking, because they knew there wasn't really, there was literally a million people there, but not a single one, apart from maybe a couple that were of a fighting background to take these fucks on.
I remember that day because I went to I can't remember if it was a football or rugby match, so I went to something, and there was a lot of like families and kids going to that.
Absolutely. They didn't care. They wanted a fucking. They've always been like this. They just want to kick off. Yeah. They were down there with face coverings and.
Would these be the people that would be down the football if there wasn't so?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were obviously like Millwall type.
Right.
These were literally like Millwall firm kind of far right. That's why I say Kent far right, because it's that kind of real kind of far right. Combat 18 kind of crew.
Wow, that's I say it's one of those things where these people exist, but getting told about them, it's like, it does make you feel have a dirty feeling, particularly as someone who like on the right, as it were.
Well, no, because you're in the economic centre, right? You're not a racialist, you're not a social conservative, you're not a thug.
Well, no, particularly the last one. I'm not big enough to be a pug.
So I mean, you're a legitimate right wing, I don't call you an economist because you're not necessarily an economist, but you're someone that holds economic right wing views. You're not
ideologically based as opposed to just
absolutely.
wanting to be part of a tribe.
Yes.
It's still
or just a flat out xenophobe.
Yeah. Well, that's true. But not me, for the record.
No. But I mean, so it's going to be interesting. I kind of actually wanted to sit down and listen to the radio tonight, but I don't think that's going to happen because we're going to be out drinking.
Boris is giving a speech at 10, which I wanted to see just what he actually says, but again, I doubt we're going to be able to watch that, particularly where we're going. That probably wouldn't go down too well.
We're going to be in Bethnal Green, which, for anyone who doesn't know, I mean, is Rome. Well, it's not necessarily properly Remain because it's a big Bangladeshi area, so it's not. The white people remain.
Yeah, and particularly on a Friday night, it's got a lot of middle-class professionals who are out drinking.
Yes.
So that is literally the opposite of the pro-Boris, pro-Leave group.
It's a massive hipster area, so it's just for anyone who doesn't know, Bethnal Green, it's in the east of London. When I say the east of London, it makes it sound really far out. It's just east of the financial district. Yeah. Traditionally very kind of poor. When you hear the East End, that is the East End. That is the Victorian East End.
Yes. But actually when proper London, when the Victorian ages, but not the sort of London that we live in, which used to be Essex a few decades ago.
Like newly, as in like somewhere that was not like where we are, that was urbanised 100 years ago. We're talking about places that have been urban for fucking centuries and we're talking Jack the Ripper territory.
Yeah. And there's near the V&A Museum if anyone's been there.
Yes, yeah. And don't forget the Children's Toys Museum.
Oh yeah, the Children's Toys Museum. Even as a kid, that bored me.
I went there fucking once, and I don't remember a single thing. I remember walking. I remember literally the upstairs floor, and that's it. And I don't remember the actual exhibits or anything.
One question again about Brexit related is at 11 o'clock today.
Yeah.
Do we automatically, I would say, all the sort of Remain and the Leave the sort of labels, they all become null and void. We've all got to find new...
No, it doesn't.
Well, no, on a technical level, as it were. Like, you might be pro-EU.
It absolutely doesn't, because as I've said before, the Labour Party particularly will be depending on who the next leader is, the Labour Party will be voting on will be campaigning on a platform of re-entry.
But the ordinary person has to now get convinced to be a person of re-entry. Like, for example, you'd be the perfect example of this. Somebody who voted Remain, would you be in favour on the 1st of February to be holding a second referendum and because then you've got to convince people like you that that's what they've got to do.
So are you saying, is there a charm offensive ahead?
I would say that it's going to be very interesting in the next few months to see what the polls are, because the interesting with the polls on Remain or Leave, they've been doing the same poll now since the referendum, and it's consistently had a slightly majority for Remain. But now that you're having basically a rejoin or remain outside, that's a different question.
But I think you have to remember, just because it's a different question, it doesn't mean the teams are different.
Not initially, but as I would say, from somebody who would actually, like yourself, who was on the sort of was pro-Remain, accepted the result of a referendum. How long do you say, okay, now that's enough time before I can actually say I legitimately call for a second referendum?
Good point. So going anecdotally, for me, it's probably 5 years to a decade. I say a decade because that gives you a nice round number to sort of look at the economic analysis of the last 10 years. On a like human tribal level, not me, but this is what I can see most Remainers going instantly.
That's what I was.
Most Remainers are already talking about campaigning or being part of an effort to rejoin.
But it is. I mean,
do not believe that most Remainers are now in favour of leaving. There are a certain amount, but do not believe that most are now. Just like, don't believe when ardent Remainers tell you that there's now more leavers who are now in favour of remaining. Don't believe either side. Human nature is animalistic. We are tribal. Most people do not change their views.
Well, I'd say it's going to be very interesting 5 or 10 years in that regard, because it's going to have to be that a party is going to have to win a majority in the House of Commons on a second rejoin referendum platform.
This will be broken down culturally. If you're from the north, if you're from the reactionary home counties, you will still, and if you're white working class, you will still see it as part of a cultural fight to keep you outside the EU. And if you're from the kind of, I suppose, the bankers' home counties, if you're from London, if you're from the southern cities, you will still see it as your cultural, your side, your kind of, like, so to speak, and I don't mean to generalise, but your kind of middle class intelligentsia will definitely be, it is your cultural cause to rejoin.
Unfortunately, I think you're correct about that, and I think the moves that Starmer is making sort of vindicate that theory. Whereas he's now talking about making the argument for freedom of movement. Where
is it really?
Yeah. So if you're trying to recapture the North, that's the last argument you want to make.
Oh no, you're right about sorry, I did hear this. Absolutely the wrong move in general.
But if you want to expand your base,
exactly. If you're talking about wanting to win back the traditional Labour heartlands that you need to win, unless you build a whole new red wall in the south, which by the way is physically impossible.
Yep. There's just not enough seats to do that.
You can literally only win cities, and with the exception of London, there's not enough seats to make up cities.
What are you going to do? Win West Sussex and Surrey?
No, exactly. You can't win the Shires.
No.
It's physically impossible for even the slightest of the centre left parties to win the Shires.
Yeah.
Actually, anything centre is hard to win the Shires. So, you either have to, I'm sorry to say this, you either have to take on a little bit of, and I know you don't want to do it, you have to take on a little bit of socially liberal populism, a tiny bit, a smidge of it. You have to give it a wink. You have to give it a wink and a nudge to try and win the North back, or you die.
Yeah, no, I think that will be right, because as we've discussed on this podcast,
you have to Lisa Nandy it.
Yeah, that's basically what Nandy's strategy is, and I think that's why she's gone from being a nobody to being somebody who people are tipping to be the leader now.
And I think I've said this last week, but I now see it more likely as that there's a Long Bailey Lisa Nandy showdown than I actually see it Keir Starmer Long Bailey showdown.
It will be interesting, because those are the only three that have actually gotten the nod so far from the local parties. And Rebecca Long Bailey got her official numbers a couple of days ago. But I would say that I think you're right, and I think we've discussed on this a couple of times, that the North in particular they have long memories, and if they don't like a party, they will not.
Well, they haven't got jobs. Of course, they've got long memories. They've got nothing else to remember. Sorry, North. I like poking fun at you, but I understand we need you.
Yeah.
I don't know what for, but we need you. Anyway, go on.
Nice accents and tea.
Yeah. Yorkshire grandmothers, they're great people until they start throwing racial epithets around.
Oh, people in the West Country do that as well, that's fine.
I'm from the Borderlands with Essex, it's the same shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, as we were saying.
But it's, as I say, they're going to have long memories, and the sort of the old sort of Victorian alliance between the working class before they were the working class and the lords of the old aristocracy would seem to be actually making a comeback, which is very interesting and could indicate that the sort of Labour working class thing might actually be a very 20th century phenomenon.
I think we've already hit that now, that we know it was a 20th century phenomenon, because In fact, I was listening back to that Matthew Goodwin analysis 2 days ago from last month, post-election, and fuck me, is it dead on.
Yeah.
And when you look at the analysis of voting records from particularly the North and working class Midlands, you tend to realise that actually the working class in those areas pretty much was kind of sustained from voting throughout most of the early 21st century.
Because they didn't have anyone representing them, with
Exactly,
Blair
yeah.
and the Red and the Tories trying to be more sort of softer,
So
which they didn't appeal to them at all.
Absolutely. So it wasn't until the populist era we're in now that they actually voted post 20th century.
I suppose the new voters that Farage would have thought of gotten initially, and then Boris has taken on in this last election.
I mean, there's some food for thought for you.
It
which
is.
Okay, how many times do we have to say this? And this has basically been the talk of the town for the last near enough 2 months. Where does the Labour Party go in regards to how it wins back its voters?
Yeah.
And sorry, Momentum either has to hold its nose or get the fuck out and realise that you have to give the wink and a nudge to right-wing populism.
If the thing is that if Lisa Nandy does go on to win it, and I think that will probably cause a sort of inter-momentum fight that the media, most people won't be able to see, but will utterly destroy the movement from the inside. Because that's what happens to all far-left movements.
Friends and family members who I spoke to the other day in one sitting said if Lisa Nandy gets the candidacy, if she becomes party leader, they will rip up their card and they will leave the party.
I've
said the same thing about Jess Phillips, to be fair, but yeah.
Well, if they do that, then they'll be doing the Labour Party a huge favour.
Absolutely. Right, we're going to sign off because it's Brexit night. We've got drinking to do.
Oh, yes.
For many different reasons.
Commiseration, celebrations, all our personal reasons.
And then we're also going to go and watch Oil Men in Pants. So we'll see you later.
See you later.
Bye.